My name is Hazel. I don't normally sound like this. I think I'm getting the November bug that's kind of been going around, definitely at UAL over the last couple of weeks. I'm a communications and marketing manager, and I've been at UAL now for 6 years. Today we are joined by Sylvester, who is the front of house manager at International Student House, and Laura Bosworth, who is the founder of Real Agency. You'll have seen from the invite, one of the topics or two of the topics that have been really close to my heart, especially recently, have been how can we all face what's about to happen in terms of the cost of living and energy crisis, and how that's inevitably going to affect students, not only at the application stages, but once we start communicating to them when they're living on site as well. And not just for accommodation, although that's my speciality. We know that in terms of catering and retail and sport, nearly every kind of touch point, we're going to have a massive impact. And I wanted really a massive discussion about this with other universities to find out if there's anything that we can kind of share, any best practices. So Sylvester's going to be presenting on that. Authenticity, I think, at the moment is a really big drive when it comes to communications and marketing, and that's why I've got the lovely Laura who's going to be presenting on that, because she's an expert in that field, and I've had the pleasure of working with her over the summer with our summer business. I think as we move towards, I mean, we've had difficult times from COVID kind of onwards. We all, as marketers and communicators, kind of have to think of the best practices when talking to students. They are still adults, they are still experiencing what's going on in the outside world as well. And again, that level of authenticity means that the way that we maybe would have marketed or communicated in the past and our strategies might have to change. Laura is going to go first. So if you don't mind sharing your presentation, I'm going to put myself on mute, and then afterwards we'll see Sylvester's presentation, and then I'll open up a Q&A for both, if that's okay. So I'll hand over to you, Laura.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you see my PowerPoint screen? Yeah, good. Got a thumbs up. That's good. Nothing worse than accidentally leaving it on Teams and you all sit there looking at yourselves, unless that's just me that hates that. I'll do a quick intro. I'm really sorry, the way my Teams is set up, I can't see anybody now. So if anybody's got a question as we go through it, Hazel, I don't know if you can play my beautiful assistant and just let me know if a hand goes up or something, just whilst we're going through.
I'll let you know if the hand goes up, and also we're going to have time afterwards to ask questions to both you and Sylvester.
Perfect.
So that's fine.
Perfect, lovely. Okay, fab. So for anybody that doesn't know me, I'll just give you a very whistle-stop tour of who I am, because there's nothing worse than somebody talking to you and you haven't got a clue where they're coming from. So my name's Laura, as Hazel said. I own a marketing agency who specialise in students, youth and universities. We've been going now for 6.5 years, which I'm personally very proud of, because we are a grassroots unfunded agency. We started before the pandemic and we somehow managed to get through it. Thank you to our lovely clients for that. We're a team of 6 at the moment, so we are a small team, but highly effective. And this is where we come from, if it comes through. Yep. So I've been in the industry for 15 years. I've worked with PBSA operators, with developers, with universities, and we've worked across a broad range. We consider ourselves an integrated agency, although we are very small. There's very little that we can't do and very little that we outsource. The only thing I think that we've outsourced in the past has been some seriously deep code work. Everything else is done in-house. So we tend to drop into our client companies and kind of take on board their ways of working, if it's for a retained project. Or if it's for a project base, we basically just work how they want us to. It's just we're able to be flexible like that. We're called Real because I am super passionate about being authentic. I just feel like people should be who they are. People work with people, buy from people. Business is people to people. I used to work in a corporate environment. I did it for a long time. So, you know, it's not to say say that it's not for me, it's just not how I wanted to spend the rest of my working life. So I set up Reel so that I could do things in a more friendly, approachable, human, person-focused way. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 6.5 years through Reel. I won't bore you with the next slide, but I don't know if these are going to go around afterwards. So if anybody wants to see a little bit more about the agency itself, you can see our beautiful blurb that we've written about ourselves there and about how we are authentic and real. So yeah, today's topic, we're going to talk about curated versus user-generated content, a bit of a tongue twister. I don't know how many people are currently doing curated user-generated content. I personally don't see that much of it around. I see a lot of user-generated content, and I see a lot of curated, highly produced content. So if anybody is doing curated user-generated content, I'd love to hear at the end what your experience of that has been. But today I'm just kind of going to do a bit of a tour through the journey to curated user-generated content and why I think it's the way that we should be going, that we're being pushed to go because of our audience, Gen Zs and students in the main part. So to start out with curated content, the process of producing and handpicking owned and external content to share with your audience, it's pretty simple. And user-generated content that's created by somebody else that's not affiliated with our business or our university. So in the past, content marketing has taken the form of it has focused on creating, publishing and distributing content. But then when we came to around the early 2000s, we really just moved to mainly online, except for the hardcore universities out there who still have brochures, and I'm sure there's still a place for them, but I'm sure you've also got an online version of that as well. So today, whether it's social media, a review, a video, a podcast, all those different types of content, because of the lack of trust with brands now, and I'll go into a bit more detail on that in a minute, user-generated content is just on the up and up. It's not going anywhere. We've got stats that are sort of supporting that 70% of 16 to 24-year-old consumers agree that marketing is less honest in an effort to sell, which is really sad because I personally don't think that's what higher education marketing is all about. So I'm just going to go into why I think that. So the evolution of marketing content, and I've just said in little brackets, not content marketing, because it is different. So marketing content, any material marketing, media material used to promote a company's product or services. Again, I wish I could see all of your faces now because I'd like to know who is currently promoting a product or a service. I'm going to imagine it's barely any of you. It's been a long time since that's been the case. But since its mainstream use in early 2020s, about 22 years ago, when I was at university, content marketing started to take the shape of more online portals, which I'm sure everybody's using, websites and landing pages, infographics, blogs, videos, podcasts, all of those things. And I'm sure the majority of you have got all of those, maybe not the last two, but I'm sure they're in the works somewhere. Prior to that, we were talking printed collateral, brochures, point of sale, and logos as well. But it's been a long time since marketing just focused on products and services. It's about lifestyle now. And so word of mouth has come back into fashion, or came back into fashion a long time ago, I suppose, with the height of social media. And it's even more important than ever now, and it's impactful as well. So ask yourself, when's the last time you bought or booked anything without checking a review first or a social media channel? And I really do want you to have a think about this, because I sat and did this earlier, and I honestly can't remember a time in the recent years where I wasn't influenced prior to making a purchase. And I've bought houses in the last, well, a house, but I'm saying there's been a lot of money spent in the last couple of years by all of us, I'm sure. And there's not really a time where I haven't been influenced, you know. So for example, I've put a really basic example in here. You want to buy a winter coat, it's coming up to winter. If you're in the north like me, it's been winter for the last 6 months. You begin your online search, you quickly realise there's hundreds of options, different companies' websites, and what do you know? They've all got exactly the product that you want. So you have a look on social media, you have a look on Pinterest, you look at Google reviews, and you see what other people are doing and what they're wearing and what they're saying about it. They're looking for social proof. So this is the root of the term user-generated content. And now, welcome to the era of content marketing. That's where we are. So types of content marketing, again, not wanting to teach how to suck eggs, but just on a very basic level, video, all these things that you've probably all got already and are using in your strategy, testimonials and reviews, I'm sure are right at the top of that list now. Case studies, influencer marketing, strategic SEO, audio recordings. I put short form and podcast, but we'll talk about that short form in a bit, because that's going to form something in the future, I think, for user-generated content. Social media comments, also a form of content marketing, and obviously user-generated content, which incorporates all of these things. Okay, so we know all about what content is now, but let's talk about the purpose of it. Okay. So it's a strategy. We want to attract, engage, and retain the audience. You know, we don't just want to talk at them anymore. We want to promote other people's experience of our campus, not just our campus. I think that's really important to remember. We want to promote other people's experience of our campus. So we're not marketing our product or our service, we're promoting how somebody else is experiencing it, which, I mean, that's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? For people who think that marketing is the fluffy stuff, you've got to get in people's head and understand how they've experienced what we've put together for them, and then use that as a tool to encourage other people to come and engage with it. So we're doing that with social proof. I mean, thankfully, the tools do exist for us. They just make us work for it a little bit. But 6 main types of social proof. Expert, I'm sure we've all heard of these. An expert, when an expert in the industry recommends products or services, or your university. A celebrity, when somebody's on campus and they're doing something or other to endorse the campus or the accommodation or the course. A user, a student, and I know that it's a really it's probably 50-50 whether we refer to students as customers, but I have in this case, because we're talking about marketing. But yeah, a user, when they recommend a product or service. The wisdom of the crowd, whether a large group of people are seen to be endorsing your university brand. Wisdom of friends, whether people see their friends approve of your product. And certifications and awards, so whether you're giving a stamp of approval by an authoritative figure. So this, in a small instance, I suppose, could be, well, not anymore, but the Twitter blue badge, for example, or it could be an award from a regulatory body, for example. But for higher education, the two that I'm finding are the most appropriate for good return on investment are user and the wisdom of friends. Not to say that the others aren't important to attract, engage and retain, but just keeping those in mind, the user and the wisdom of friends are the focus at the moment for this. And I'm going to show you why for us. So in 2021, I wrote a blog called The Decline of Influencer Marketing. And I don't think it's a secret that influencer marketing has been under the spotlight, so to speak, with lots of different opinions as to where it's going. And it's an evolution, I think. You know, at the time I talked about a paradigm shift in consumers and what their expectation is, and that seems to still be the case. So looking at statistics provided by Voxburner and Student Beans, 81% of 16 to 24-year-olds prefer to follow influencers that share their values. So an influencer, for example, if we go back to the previous page, if it will let me, you know, an expert and a celebrity and a crowd, how are you going to share the values of your audience if you have, you know, 17 million followers, for example? So just using common sense, I suppose, back then when we put this together, and it's following the trend. So again, asking that same group of 16 to 24-year-olds how they felt about different terminology to do with influencers, they really didn't like the term influencer and social media star. Celebrity was kind of in the middle, but thought leader and content creator were the most positively received. And actually, when we asked about influencers, the wording, the terminology that came back as being associated was rich, money and fake, which is probably quite catastrophic for some influencers, who I'm sure probably now refer to themselves as content creators. But okay, so again, following on from that, we looked at some information, some stats from Statista, and again, going back to the Friends. Who practices integrity? You know, we all know our audiences. You know, it's important to them that they can trust a source. They want a source of a key person of influence or a key brand with influence. And as part of that, that might be a person, it might be an organisation, it might be a university, but we asked them who practices integrity. Unfortunately, one of the options wasn't their university, their higher education, but advertising and marketing came down at the bottom, below the news and the government, which is quite shocking, to be honest with you. And obviously they felt that they themselves practice integrity more than any of those. The reason that they don't trust advertising and marketing and these other companies is because, going back to the beginning, they think that those campaigns are set in place purely to sell, which again isn't always the case, especially when it comes to us lovely people. So getting back to that purpose of content marketing, to attract, engage and retain, we know that consumers will recommend a brand that they follow on social media to friends and family, because we know that they're only really interested in following brands, influencers, content creators that they have an affinity with. 91% of 16 to 24-year-old consumers read online reviews before making a purchase, and that's not just reading a Google review, that's looking on social media as well, looking at videos and things like that, as well as on websites. 82% ask for referrals and recommendations from family and friends before making a purchase, as well as giving them as well, which I thought was interesting. So what we know we can put into practice. So if we don't already have it, we don't just want followers on our social media, we need engaged followers. And it's difficult in higher education because, especially for student accommodation providers, the churn is an annual churn of customer, or for the academics, 3 years. So that's an interesting one, to have an engaged audience and to renew it on such a regular basis, and to keep ourselves relevant for people at that different stage each time. It's not just people first coming into our universities, on campus as well. How are we keeping them engaged with relevant content? We need consistent, positive, authentic reviews, written, spoken and video. Again, this is coming back to the fact that we're not marketing our campus, we're marketing other people's experience of our campus. And therefore, in order to achieve that consistent, positive, authentic review, we need an excellent user experience. So from our point of view, as marketers, as Res Life professionals, it's important to have the customer journey mapped out, so that we can make sure we're hitting our touch points in terms of marketing. But I mean, I think it goes further than that, and I'll go into that at the end of this. But before I do that, I just want to show a few examples of who's already doing it. So I don't know if there's anybody from any of the organisations that I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that I'm going to share. So if you are, please wave. So this is a piece of user-generated content for the University of Sheffield. It's very honest, it's clearly unscripted, and I would say it's not authentic. I would say it's actually raw. It's really sort of, well, I'll let you watch it and come to your own conclusion. I won't go all the way through it though, so I'll let me just play the first bit of it.
Sorry, Laura, was there supposed to be sound accompanying the video?
Oh yeah, there is. Could no one hear it?
No.
No, right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned it. I was just sat there enjoying it. I don't know what to do with that then if there's no sound. I don't know how to make it play if it's not just coming through. Are you going to share this out afterwards, Hazel?
we'll share the slides.
We can share it out afterwards, yeah.
Okay, well, just to give everybody a brief, let me just take you to the section where it moves from panning to the student, and then I'll explain what's happening. I think even with the sound, without the sound, you'll still understand what I mean. Okay, so did everybody see that up until where it changed to the girl?
Yes, we did.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So basically, this is Endcliffe and Ranmore, which is student accommodation in Sheffield. There wasn't actually any speaking in that first section. It was just background music whilst they panned around all of the accommodation. And then we come on to this student who I'm sure is incredibly lovely, but she pans onto the screen as if, right, I have got something I want to say. And then she just goes straight into it. We don't know who she is, where she's from. She looks like a student. She looks like she's in her student hall. But this video is 15 minutes long. So if you want to find out, that's got to be enthralling enough for you to want to stick about and listen to it. So I'm really gutted that you guys can't hear the sound on this, because this next video is of the same accommodation. I'll play it quick. I'll play a couple of seconds so that you can see. Okay, so basically what happened there is the student gave an introduction to who she was, the fact that she lived in a certain building at the university in her first year. Now she lives in another one, and I'm going to go on to do a tour. And then she goes on to do her tour. So this is a stark difference. This is the same building as the first building, which was put together by a student with no guidance from the university, no affiliation either, but they did pop a logo on there. So as far as a new student is concerned, you know, there is an affiliation. This piece, however, and fortunately the page prior only had 2,000 views. This one's had nearly 140,000 because it's been shared by that authoritative account, the University of Sheffield. Watch it when I send it out, because it's actually an excellent example of curated user-generated content. They've taken somebody who is a content creator with less than a couple of thousand followers who relates to students going to this university, and that's why it's done so well. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Again, there's no sound on any of these then if you can't hear that, but basically the point of these next few is what's not working when it really should. This post here on the left is a video that was posted by Liverpool University. They've just won an award. They just won, I think, University Campus of the Year. And it just, I mean, 50 shares, a couple of saves, a few likes. It's not much. It's not been seen by many, but it's been posted by an authoritative figure, and they've had an accreditation. So why hasn't it done well? Is it authentic though? Next one, again, you can't see it. Well, you can, but you can't hear it. So maybe I will show a bit of this one. But this is a private operator who have created a beautiful piece of content showcasing their property. It's really well put together, highly produced. It's done terribly on social media because people just don't want, students just don't want that overproduced look. I mean, I wouldn't even say this is overproduced. They just don't want something that's been produced by a brand. So let me show you a few seconds of it first. You see what I mean? Okay, so I'll go on to the next slide and you can have a look at that in your own time. I'm not even going to share, I'm not going to show you these ones because it's not showing the sound, so you can have a look at them in your own time. But essentially what is working, you can see just from looking at these, this is user generated content. They've created these, or students have created these, and you can see from the tags that they've posted them themselves. One of them has been affiliated with their operator, not a paid partnership, so that's been done off their own back, but they've just done so much better. They're not a source of influence. There's no accreditation attached to this. It's not a group there's not a group saying we like this building. It's one person, the user, who's saying, here's my experience, it's authentic, this is what it's actually like to be here. And we're looking at 30,000, 120 plus thousand, over 30,000 not just views but likes, so people who are engaging with this. And the one that really strikes me is the saves, because people are coming back to have a look at this. You know, we're in the nearly 5,000s just on this one in particular. So I suppose my point here is just that it's really important because these exist. They're being created. Why would we create them ourselves? All we need to do is curate them to get the benefit of that. I'll share the links to them so people can see them. And again, I won't share this one, but I thought it was prudent to put it on just to show how vulnerable our audience are, because 53% of 16 to 24-year-olds, according to Voxburner, have taken mental health advice from social media, which is actually quite scary when you think that that's not coming from professionals, but it is coming from peers. And this is specific to student accommodation. This post actually shows a video around a student accommodation building. I'm not sure if it's university owned or private, but it basically says nothing will ever prepare you for how lonely university is. So again, I think it's really important to dig into our marketing toolbox and take a look at social listening, so that when we're looking to source people to work with us for user generated content, we can also see these types of things and look to address that as well. So I mentioned curated a moment ago. Is there a better option? So we've talked about user generated and we've talked about curated, but there is a better option, curated user generated content. And what that basically means for anyone that's not already doing it is letting those students or the customers go out and create their content and then helping with where that is distributed and displayed. So the benefits are vast. You know, like I said before, budget and cost is a huge one because you're not creating that content. Curating and sharing user-generated content allows universities to build trust and authenticity with students because it's students creating it. Research shows that 16 to 24-year-olds are over 2 times more likely to perceive user-generated content as authentic compared to anything created by a brand. TikTok remains the most popular social media platform amongst Gen Z, meaning you're cutting the steps to reaching customers where they are. That's actually changed since I put this together. Apologies. Instagram has actually tipped the poll on that one now. But the good thing is it's the same format, so you can create your content and use it across multiple platforms with the student or the user as your point of expert, I suppose, or point of influence. 80% of TikTok users use the platform as a search engine, so they're not just scrolling anymore aimlessly, they're actually using it for things. And I know this talking to some of my team who are in this age bracket. You know, they're going on a holiday or they're going to a new town, they are using TikTok, they're not going to Google, which I personally find really intriguing. Short form video, it's the leading function being pushed by Meta across Instagram and Facebook, and that's what I was saying before about TikTok and using that content across platforms. And also a massive one, user generated content means that you've got a much higher probability of actual customer inclusivity and representation because it's being created by actual customers. You know, I know for myself, and I'm sure it's difficult when you're in a university marketing team full time, but looking for students, or in the past even models who are students, to get involved in content is so difficult. And I know that private operators and PBSA operators are so happy, you know, if they can just get a group of students together to be in a video. You just don't need to go down that route anymore. You can, you know, you can let them sort of lead the way on it. I'm trying to whistle through because I know that I'm taking it all the time. I'm a big fan of the 7-11-4 formula. So if I'm talking to you about something that you all know immensely well, then please just mute me. But the 7-11-4 formula, for anyone who's not familiar, it's about that customer journey. The stimulus, the first moment of truth, the second moment of truth, awareness, consideration, decision, that inbound marketing piece. So in 2011, Google added this step into it, which they named the zero moment of truth, ZMOT. And it's essentially that time when people are doing their research. You know, we all know about it in the industry. We know that our audience like to do lots of research, really know who we are. This is the theory word for it, I suppose. So I think what's interesting is for you to understand what your inbound strategy looks like, and are you intentionally using 7-11-4 or are you unintentionally using it? And I'll go into exactly what it is in a minute, but this is basically it. So this is the stimulus, the first point of being aware that they want to go to university or live in a student hall. This is your opportunity to then allow them to research you, become familiar with you, build trust in you. Then you've got them popping you, that should say basket. You've actually got a second one, which isn't on here for some reason, which is purchase. So that's your first moment of truth here. And then you've got the second moment of truth. And this is your zero here. So here's what you need to be doing. This is your goal. So the 7 is 7 hours of content. So 7 hours worth of content that people can binge on, whether it's an article, a podcast, a video. And this is useful, meaningful, purposeful content, not just let's create some content because I see it without really knowing what that means. Sorry. It's not about an algorithm anymore, because it's, you know, algorithms are smarter than that. Google's smarter than that. It's actually about giving your potential customer something of worth, giving them 7 hours worth of useful information that they can binge on. 11 different occasions, 11 different interactions. So you're not just giving them, you know, 7 hours worth of a PDF and say, here you go, read that, at the end of it, you'll love us. It's about not knowing where they're going to look. So having it in those different areas. So it's almost like you've got your customer journey map here, and you've got dot here, another dot, maybe here, this one here, one over here. This bit here is the elaborated version that you don't have, and that's these 11 spaces here. So you want to create your 7 hours and have 11 different interactions with them, and meet them in 4 different places. So I've said online because I do think that's what we're talking about today, but you can obviously use your students or your customers for offline interaction, and then use it online as well. And I think it's really important not to be afraid to put those students at the front of your brand as well. People like to buy and to interact with people, and as a huge organisation like a university, it's not just your logo or your colours, it's about how you make people feel, providing that there is an official affiliation, an official link from that person back to your brand. That's also considered a place. So when people interact with you and your content on those different platforms, they're experiencing something meaningful and they're building that deeper bond. So the more places you can meet them, the deeper the connection is formed. So you'd be glad to hear we're near the end. So my key takeaways: representation is more important than ever. And honestly, if there's one thing you take away from this, it's that representation. User-generated content curated by you means that your content is created by your demographic. Therefore, you're representing your demographic. You're not assuming that you know what it is or using data to say, okay, and then going off and having a look. You're using it. So after a turbulent couple of years, it's so important because you've got more deferrals, I'm sure. You've got more mature students coming in as well, and ensuring that every single student, I'm sure you can't do every student, but as many students as possible are represented in your marketing is so important if you want to catch their attention for 7 hours worth of content. There's definitely space for a range of backgrounds, ages and abilities to be represented if you know how to source them, and you can source them. So this kind of falls into the top one. Don't discount current students because they're gold. If you've got a current student who is a micro content creator, who is creating content that's relevant to your students, You can use them offline to create online content as well, and don't be afraid, like I say, to put them at the front of your campaigns because they are your audience, and making your content accessible is the final one. So like I say, search engines like TikTok are social media platforms, sorry, like TikTok are search engines. They're less likely to search for your content, but they will search for something that they feel they have an affinity with. So you need to be in that place. You need to make yourself accessible without making it hard work, and cut out the barriers for them. Final few pieces. Video is king. Empathize. People to people, write for people first. When you're storyboarding, do it for people first. Please don't do it for SEO. That's the next point. SEO is way more intelligent now. You don't need to write for it. Write for people, the rest will follow. Content for content's sake doesn't work for you anymore. It's got to be meaningful and purposeful. Assume that people are going to read it. It's not a case of just using it to push yourself up the rankings anymore. Research content is evergreen. You can use that year on year. Live audio content. I've made a note on this. Made so many notes that I haven't shared with you today because I've just waffled, but I will pop them in an email and let Hazel or Sarah share them out. But yeah, Discord, for example, with VoIP, WhatsApp for voice notes, Twitter voice notes, regardless of everything that's going on with Twitter, it's probably not going anywhere. And consistency does matter. If you start to build up trust with people and they expect you to be somewhere, be it a blog post or whatnot, you need to be there. Otherwise, you're going to break that that trust that you've worked so hard to get. And a few questions for yourself, which I won't go into. I'll let you have a look through on that. Just one thing to mention. The user generated content, whoever you're working with, if you currently are or you're going to look for a student to work with, they can't simply be an influencer. They must be your demographic. If they're not, I would suggest that you start looking at how you can amend that, because it's not going to be well received. I've worded it better here. If the following doesn't apply to current partnerships, you need to start rethinking them. People with a talent and a job or on the course, aside from simply being an influencer, are who students and Gen Z will share their main values with. And that's me. Finally.
Oh, no, not finally, Laura. That was there were so many notes and so many questions that I have. I think we'll go till Sylvester next, and then at the end there'll be a Q&A for both of you. But I absolutely loved what you said when it came to write for people, not for SEO. And you said something, I think, in one of the earlier slides, where it's you're not advertising your campus, you're advertising the people that live in the campus and their experience. And I know, like, because I'm in a silo myself, like I'm a comms person and the rest of my team are accommodation. It's sometimes very hard to remind people that, you know, you can advertise a room or a building or like all of the inclusive things. It's the student at the end of the day. So I absolutely loved that presentation.
Oh, good.
Sylvester, are you ready to present?
I think it's going to be hard for me to follow, Laura, because thank you for the great presentation.
No, I'm really
honestly,
excited.
If you can, Hazel or Laura, if you can share it, I would definitely like to share with our marketing team. I'm just going to try to see if I can share the screen.
No problem at all. If not, Sarah has your presentation as well, so we could share it that way too.
Hold on a second. I should. I don't know if that's. Oh, hold on a second. I probably need to move it.
I can see it. Can everyone else see?
If I do that now, can you see it?
Yeah.
So I'm not a marketing person, so I apologize. Some of you might know me. So my name is Sylvester. I work for the International Student House, or ISH. Just a bit about me and about ISH. So for me, I would say relatively new to student accommodation. Most of my life I spent in hotels, large hotels in central London, rooms division and revenue and sales. So trying to really the commercial activities of hotels. I came into student accommodation 6 years ago into ISH. At that time, we were a bit larger, which I'll talk a bit more about it, in order really to look at the accommodation team from a more commercial aspect of it, try to bring a bit more commerciality into it. Finding the balance between being commercial and being charitable. I honestly think after 6 years, I found that balance really, really good, and I understand it well. Sometimes I still have a tendency to be over commercial, but I've got colleagues trying to pull me down and make me understand some things are better done slightly differently. My role involves really overlooking all aspects of student accommodation. So I look after their well-being, behavior, their payments, their applications. So the whole customer journey, as I call it, from the start to beginning. And I look after 4 different teams, manage my own budgets. Occupancy is really, really important to me. I've got quite, I wouldn't say tough, but CEO who really want to make sure the accommodation revenue is there. We're doing really, really well and really, really proud of the team. One of the things which I think, Laura, you mentioned, something which I do a lot of work is the summer sales, because it's a big chunk of business for ISH. Creating home away from home is really, really important for me wherever I work. And that's for students and residents over here. The one thing which always stuck with me, which somebody told me a long time ago, is train your staff well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. And, you know, something which stuck with me for so many years. Just a bit about Ish. So some of the London education institution and universities will know us because we work with so many of them. We are charity, but for us, it's not just being about charity providing accommodation. It's really providing a community for students so they feel at home. Staff know them. We've got events team. We've got lots of different team, lots of different things we do on a daily basis for them to make sure they feel really, really at home. Currently 330 students. We used to have much more. Currently I've got 2 different buildings just on Great Portland Street and also flats in Balham. We used to have another building housing over 300 students plus 44 families opposite Regent's Park, which sadly has been sold. We are actively currently looking to replace that and grow. Diversity is at the heart of everything we do. So currently I've got students from 53 different countries. So if you think within 330 students, 53 different countries, what's important for us to make sure they actually talk with each other, engage with each other, they take something away from that. You know, I'm a believer that students don't learn only at the university, they also learn at their accommodation, because there's a lot of engagement with that. We got 37 each scholars, which we provide their accommodation, and also we work with 13 different universities in London, where they actually pay for their bursary and we accommodate that. We do have 3 separate businesses which support the charity because we're a self-funded charity. So we have a bar and cafe as well as a conference and 2 to 9 venue, which does lots of different gigs. I always say it's not just a charity, it's not just accommodation, it's just a bit of a mixture of everything. So that's the sales point, the sales pitch from me. Talking about the topic which is really, really important for me, which I want to talk about, and it's something which I've noticed probably about 2-3, during the pandemic. It was started with really residents' mental well-being. It was a huge topic which lots of people discuss with, and that leads obviously to the current crisis of cost of living and how it impacts students. I've looked at some data over last yesterday just to try to understand it. I mean, current inflation in UK October, and that's the government data, is 11.52, increased by 1.96 from within 1 month. Office of National Statistics, when they look at the 30 most common items bought and looking at the lowest price, and I think lots of students, we pride ourselves to be affordable, and lots of our students, which I've got staying with us over here, they are on a budget, and I can see that. And looking at that, 17% of those items, sorry, 17%, the most common items grown up price by 17% within 12 months. It's a huge increase. Now, looking at the Unipol is one of the charity which does, I'm sure lots of you heard of it. They look at the cost they've done in last December 2021. They've done accommodation cost survey, and what they found out, the cost of accommodation was £7,371 for pounds out of London, and 10,857 in London. It's increased of 4.4. Private rent increase are even higher. I mean, obviously, looking at that, when I look £1,000, I live in London, I know it is even higher, but that is looked at as 11% higher year on year. That is obviously going to be driven a lot by the energy increase, because lots of students who rent privately, they will have to take those costs themselves. Sad thing, and looking at that, I was really, in a way, I wasn't shocked, but I thought this is really, really drastic. 11% of students are using food banks. according to NUS, and that's quite alarming. And I honestly think with the cost of living crisis going stronger and stronger, more and more people rely on that, this can only get worse. And what can we do? I'll talk in a minute what we do, and I found some interesting things and some interesting article which I'll be happy to share. A survey by NUS found that 1 in 3 students are left with only £50 each month after paying their rent and bills, while 96% started cutting back on their spending as a result of cost of living. It's alarming thing. In the rest of the UK, excluding London, private rents were up by 9.1% according to Zoopla. That is looking at privately rented accommodation. Looking at some data online, the average annual rent increased by 7% for 2023-2024. That's what's predicted to increase for next year. I've mentioned that below, and I don't know, some of you might know exactly what the maintenance loan for students is going to be, but from year to year has increased currently by 2.3%. So there's a huge drop, but what students are actually paying, what they can take as their maintenance loan. When looking at research, this was an interesting article which I came across yesterday by This Is Money, and shows that taking into account all student basics, and they actually listed everything, their accommodation, food. I think there was about 15 different items. Going out, all the other things. I think there was a term which was not inflation, but stewflation or something like that, because it was students are paying 8.9% for all those things in uni and PBS halls, and it's 12.3% in private rented accommodation. Once again, the private rented accommodation is probably going to be driven a lot by energy cost increase. And London, it's renting in London. I've got students coming on daily basis asking, can they have a room? Can they have a room? I've got nothing, because they cannot afford to pay any more for that. Now, looking at the total expenses, and I'm not going to read all this, be happy if Hazel or Laura wants to share that. Looking at that, in London, students are left with only £38 per week and £69.52 after paying for their accommodation. Now, that is how students can live on £38. It's hard to understand, and some of them are. Now, the one thing which I want to mention over here is, I think, Laura, you mentioned that at the end of your presentation, the mental well-being is something which I've done lots of work with in my team over here, and enough students and some universities try to look at how we can support the mental well-being for students, which has increased. The number of cases I see students being affected, that has increased, and the cost of living crisis, it's just gonna have a huge further impact on that. So taking all this into account, what we can do. So I've listed some of the things which we do over here, and I know some institution in London, there are some charity student accommodation in London which I work quite a lot with. They do some of those things. Monthly payment plans. Now, I was so happy to hear on the last GSL conference that Unite, one of the largest providers, they actually introduced that. We've been running that for over 6 years since I've been over here. Lots of students cannot just afford to pay everything, within 2 or 3 terms. Their parents might be paying for their accommodation and everything. They want monthly. So we work with lots of students. They come in, they sit down with me, I discuss, work out how the best way they can afford to pay for their accommodation. The interesting things when I look at the stats, pre-pandemic, I would have probably about 10-15% of my residents on monthly plan. That has increased to 25-30% at the moment. So there is an increase, and I'm sure that is driven a lot by the cost of living. We do also have a team who is not exceptionally skilled, but we had some training, how we can actually support them, how to manage their finances. Whenever I see somebody who wants to do monthly payment plans, I'll sit down and I'll try to have a conversation with them, how they're managing their finances. And sometimes that can be easily tackled, because some of their way of thinking are spent, I got that amount of money straight away, but they need to think longer term plan. They need to think for 6 to 10 months sometime how they're going to manage. We do a free weekend brunch for the residents, so every one of our students can come staying with us, can Come Saturday and Sunday, we provide their food. It's from 8 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock. They come in, there is a canteen, they can sit down and they can have a free meal. Interesting, the take up on that has increased drastically. Not all of them still come over there, but the pickup has increased. It's a time for me when because I usually work, I try to be in office either Saturday and Sunday, and it's a good time to meet some of our residents and have a conversation with them. We do offer 50% discount for the students in our coffee and bar. We do hardship fund. It's usually about 60 to 70,000 pounds, and not only our residents, every university member who's member of ISH, students can apply for that. Either myself or my colleague, Dean of Student, will look at that. There's a form student can fill in. Those items, the reason for applications vary. There might be issue with the family. Somebody, family lost their job, they cannot pay for accommodation. They might have lost their phone, they must have lost their laptop, and that was the only way they could afford to replace that item. The interesting thing, which we started for quite a long time ago, and there's a huge pickup, is actually we do have lots of part-time work in our bar, maybe in our conference. I have a summer work for when I need summer staff to work for me during the summer month when I've got my summer business coming in. I try to attract that to my residents. They will take that. We pay London living wage, and they can take something for 2-3 hours a day, maybe weekend. I know them. I don't have to do a massive interview because I would know them who works for me, and it's really, really helps those students. We also offer mental health support that is provided by an outside company, but we pay for that for students. Massive pickup on that one as well, which is once again really, really alarming. Free entry student events. Actually, this evening we have a Thanksgiving supper for students. Anybody come in, and it's not it's free. Subsidized Christmas lunch. Christmas lunch is quite expensive, but I think for students it's very, very cheap. They just need to book for that. And we do the Valley party, movie nights, sport classes, those things, yoga, free movie. There's lots of things. There's nearly every day there's something happening, so the student can actually attend. I'll go back to what we are. For us, it's really important that the student from so many different countries mix together, talk to each other, bounce off their ideas of each other, and hopefully they'll take something back home when they go to their country, and that sort of has a good impact on all of us. We do also opt for subsidized travel club. Our catering contractors actually provide 20 food scholars, so 20 of our scholars have complete package. Universities will pay for their accommodation, so the tuition. We provide the accommodation, and the catering company will do their food, complete food, so it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I also had a look what other universities are doing, and it was interesting. I found lots of this information actually online through iNews. There was an interesting article. I think the hardship fund it's increasing tremendously. University of Cambridge, Imperial College increased for 45,000 grant. St Mary University. St Mary University is somebody who I don't know if anybody over here. They've done a great work. Actually, I've looked at their website, what they were doing. Great work. Nottingham University, York University. What is interesting about all of this when I talk about our students and residents, I think, something which I discuss with my CEO is we're looking at a lot how we can support our residents and students when we're thinking of the cost of living crisis, but we also have to be mindful of our staff. That's something which, I always think, if I see somebody who is struggling, I'll have a conversation. And we are doing something, and I'm sure lots of other companies are doing something. Interesting thing, there was I don't know if I can share this. I will try my best. There was an article. I don't know if you can see my screen. Hello?
We can see your
Yep, we
screen.
can.
Perfect. So if you look at this, was shared by one of my colleagues on LinkedIn, and this was an article actually yesterday. BBC. Now, once it starts hitting BBC, we can, I think, see that people are taking this more and more seriously. And it was cost of living, how half of students in financial difficulty as prices soar. Now, I'm somebody who also listened to LBC, so there was a long conversation on LBC yesterday as well, which is London. It was actually called a leading broadcasting corporation, LBC, which is in, and they were talking about that. So it's something I think which we all have to be mindful. I try to see what's going on. I personally think there's lots of universities, lots of accommodation who are doing a lot of work separately, having some sort of support and trying to learn from each other. And I understand some institutions, some companies cannot afford certain things. But there's a lot of things which we can share between ourselves and try to understand how we can actually help support not just our residents, but also our staff. One thing which I also want to mention over here is, for me, I try to pick up if somebody is in any difficulties, but staff who I've got working with me are the eyes. They see exactly what's happening. They know the residents, they talk with them, and they're the ones who usually can identify somebody who is falling into mental health crisis. And picking this up before it actually happens is really, really, really important. Thank you. I have, if anybody's got any questions, I'm not an expert, but I try to know as much as possible, because the more of us can support the residents, the better. I've mentioned before, for me, it's their education is not just at the university campus, it is in the accommodation hall. They learn a lot from us, they listen, they talk, and they want to be heard, they want to express their opinion, and they learn a lot from all of us. So thank you, everybody. If anybody's got a question, if anybody wants to find my profile on LinkedIn, that's where it is. And thank you.
Thank you, Sylvester. And I should have added at the start of that talk, I met Sylvester on LinkedIn 2 days ago and asked him to put this together in the space of 2 days, and he did really quickly. And that was another brilliant presentation. Lots and lots that you guys are doing that I want to go and take away and talk to my accommodation